Every day, animals do something unexpected. They change their behavior around people who are suffering. A dog abandons its favorite spot and quietly moves closer. A cat suddenly seeks out more contact. A horse becomes calmer the moment its rider grows tense. These reactions appear across different species, in different situations, and for reasons that are not immediately obvious, which raises an intriguing question. Can animals actually recognize human sadness? Because sadness has no clear shape, no color, no visible signal. Yet animals often respond to it as if they know it's there. So, what are they noticing that we're missing? One shelter worker described a cat that usually avoided people. It wasn't unfriendly, it simply preferred being alone. Yet whenever one particular volunteer became upset, the cat would quietly leave its favorite hiding place and sit beside her. The pattern repeated often enough that other staff members began noticing it too. Coincidence? Maybe. But stories like this appear all over the world, and that is exactly why scientists became interested. For a long time, many researchers assumed animals probably couldn't recognize human emotions in any meaningful way. After all, emotions are complicated. You can't hold sadness in your hand. You can't point to it across a room. Unlike a facial scar or a broken bone, emotions don't have an obvious physical form. Yet animals often behave as if they know something has changed, and over time, the evidence became difficult to ignore. Of course, stories alone aren't proof. People are excellent at finding patterns, even when none exist. So researchers began testing the idea under controlled conditions. One experiment placed dogs in a room with people they had never met before. Some participants simply hummed, others pretended to cry. The researchers expected curiosity. What they observed was stranger. Again and again, the dogs approached the crying person, not their owner, not someone familiar, a complete stranger. At first, that doesn't sound remarkable. Crying makes noise. Perhaps the dogs were simply reacting to an unusual sound. But that explanation creates another question. Why move closer? If the sound was unpleasant or confusing, avoiding it would seem safer. Yet many of the dogs chose the opposite response. They approached, and that is where the mystery begins. Animals spend their entire lives reading behavior. Imagine a deer standing in an open field. A tiny shift in posture from another deer might signal danger. A brief change in movement could reveal a nearby predator. Missing those signals can be fatal. For millions of years, survival depended on noticing details. Body language, movement, breathing, tension, attention. Long before humans built cities, animals were already experts at reading one another, including us. But sadness isn't the only emotion scientists have studied. To understand whether animals can recognize sadness, researchers first had to determine whether animals can recognize emotions at all. The answer appears to be yes. Researchers have found that horses can distinguish between angry and happy human faces, even when looking at complete strangers. To a horse, a face isn't just a face, it's information. Dogs appear to do something similar. Brain imaging studies suggest that dogs process emotional tones in human voices using specialized regions of the brain. The words themselves may not matter very much, the emotion does. But perhaps the most surprising discovery is that animals aren't relying on a single clue. They're watching everything: the way we walk, the way we sit, the speed of our movements, the tension in our shoulders, the direction of our gaze, the rhythm of our breathing. Hundreds of tiny signals that most people never consciously notice. In many ways, our bodies begin speaking long before our mouths do, and animals may be listening more carefully than we realize. A veterinarian once recalled a dog whose owner had recently lost a close family member. Before friends noticed anything unusual, the dog's behavior changed. It followed its owner everywhere. If she moved rooms, it followed. If she sat down, it sat beside her. Weeks later, as life gradually returned to normal, the behavior faded. The dog never explained itself. Of course, that's part of the challenge. Animals cannot tell us what they're thinking, which leads to one of the most important questions in animal behavior. Because noticing emotion is one thing, responding to it is something else entirely. A smoke detector recognizes smoke. It doesn't understand fire. Many scientists believe animals may work in a similar way. They may not understand sadness the way humans do. Instead, they may simply detect patterns that often appear together. A quieter voice, different routines, less movement, changes in posture, changes in attention, changes in energy. A reasonable explanation. In fact, for years, many researchers believed that was probably the answer. Then they ran into a problem. Again and again, people described behaviors that seemed harder to explain. Not animals avoiding distress, animals moving toward it. That alone was unusual. But some reports seemed even stranger. Researchers approach these stories carefully because many can have ordinary explanations. Animals may notice subtle physical changes that humans overlook. They may respond to changes in scent, behavior, or routine, and some stories may simply be coincidence. Even so, certain observations continue to raise questions. A woman recovering from surgery described her dog becoming restless shortly before sudden waves of pain. Not afterward, before. The dog would become alert, pace the room, and focus entirely on her. Then the pain would arrive. Does that prove the dog understood what was happening? No, not necessarily. But it suggests the dog may have been detecting something real. Perhaps a change in breathing, a change in body chemistry, a change in posture, something invisible to the people around her. And suddenly, the mystery becomes much larger than sadness. The question is, no longer, can animals recognize human emotions? The question becomes, how much of our emotional lives are visible to other creatures without us knowing? Because every emotion leaves traces, changes in movement, changes in voice, changes in breathing, changes in chemistry. Most of those signals happen beneath conscious awareness. We rarely notice them. But animals evolved in a world where noticing tiny changes could mean the difference between life and death. Perhaps they are simply better observers than we are. Scientists still don't have a complete answer, but every year, the evidence points in the same direction. Animals are paying attention, far more attention than we once believed. They notice our expressions, our voices, our routines, our behavior. Sometimes they seem to notice changes before the people around us do, maybe even before we do. And perhaps that's the most fascinating possibility of all, because if a creature that doesn't speak our language can still sense when something is wrong, then connection may begin somewhere deeper than words, something older than conversation, older than civilization, perhaps even older than humanity itself. And the next time an animal quietly moves closer during one of your worst days, you may find yourself wondering, does it understand your sadness? Or did it simply notice something about you that you hadn't noticed yet?